This is the House of Hockey podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network. Hockey is more than a game, it's a lifestyle. It's you, the diehard supportive fans, your favorite players who are on the team you cheer for, and the organization who supports them.
The companies that make your gear, bags, and beer league sweaters. The hockey moms and hockey dads, and everything else that makes this House of Hockey your home. Come on in. I'm Breezy.
And I'm Rae Rae.
And this is our house. You are listening to the House of Hockey podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network. And I'm your host, Breezy.
And I'm your other host, Rae Rae.
And this is episode 31. And this episode, we will have a former pro joining us by the name of Brad Leeb. And he also has his own podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network that actually releases this week. Brand new, first episode this week.
Yes. And we got a little preview with him to talk about his podcast, Life After Hockey, and what he's going to be talking about on the podcast. But he also took us through his whole playing career, playing in Germany, playing with his brother in Germany, growing up together with a hockey brother. He's got some good stories for us to share, which, is our favorite part of asking these guys about their time playing. And he also is really, really transparent about his life after hockey and what he went through and the challenges he faced, even playing hockey from the mental side of things, and always, identifying as a hockey player, and then what happens when you stop playing. And it's a very in-depth interview. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun talking to Brad, and I think that we think his podcast is going to be really cool, a different dynamic to all the other podcasts that are out there right now. And I think Brad's doing really good things, and it was a breath of fresh air to hear hockey being talked about at a different angle than what I think most people are used to. So stay tuned for that. That'll be on here shortly.
Yes. There's been a lot of action since the season ended off ice with free agency, the 500 goalies that are up for to be able to be traded. There's been a lot of action. We had the draft since we last talked to you guys. A lot. It's just been a lot of crazy. It feels like Christmas. You just don't know. Or no, it's like getting a surprise box and opening it up and being like, oh, this player's going here now? Okay, sure. It's been fun to watch, still going on. And I think a lot of people might be wondering how I feel about Crawford leaving the Blackhawks, since I've talked about that quite a bit here and on other podcasts as a guest. And I'm fine with Crawford leaving. What I'm not fine with is that Bowman is making the decision to rebuild the team. And the core four boys, Kane, Taze, Keith, and Seabrook, were sort of blindsided and weren't talked to about any of these changes. And they're not really happy about it. And Taze has gone on the record, and I don't have the exact quote, but nobody told him, is basically what he said about Crawford leaving and these decisions to groom these younger players. And they're not really happy about it. And I got to be honest, they deserve better. Those four guys have quite a few years left on their contracts, a couple of years, and this is the peak of their career. And to take away the opportunity for them to not be able to win a Stanley Cup. It's just not right. And they've been loyal to the organization and to the fans. And it really gives me that like yucky feeling in my stomach, like what Bowman is doing. And like he's almost trying to force them to move, like, because they can decide if they want to be moved. And it's like he's almost forcing their hand to say, you guys have to make the decision. I'm not going to be the one to do this. And I just can't stand it. I think it's a disgusting behavior. I think that is not how you treat those guys. And I mean, I would not blame them if after this season, any of them try to leave. I don't want them to, but they deserve better than Bowman. I really think Bowman has got to go. I don't believe in what's happening right now. And they still have it in them to really try to go somewhere and take it to the cup and get in the playoffs again, but not with Subban in goal or, letting these other players, these other goalies get the NHL experience. Like now is not the time when you still have Kane and Taves and Duncan Keith on your squad, in my opinion. And they kept Kubalik, which I'm very happy about, and that's great, but it's just
I mean,
sad.
I think there's a lot of teams that are kind of in the same boat. I think that there's a lot of guys that have big contracts across the league and certain teams that, could get so close, but, aren't quite there and changes need to be made and probably fans that feel exactly like how you do. I mean,
It's just sad. I'm
it's tough.
sad.
It's tough. This is I was telling my my nephew, I was like, I hate this part of the year. Everyone's leaving, everyone's coming and going. I'm not happy about it. This is sad. I feel like it's a whole new team. I don't know what's going on, but it's fun because I mean, you don't win championships by keeping the same team day in and day out. Um, People and teammates get bored of each other, and their team dynamic changes. Players grow. Players take on new parts of the game, and it sometimes it just doesn't work in the same kind of playing field that you're used to playing. So I think it's a good thing. I think there's a way to go about it that, like you said, you're not happy with it. So, but at the same time, I think it just comes down to the way it's presented, and you either have to, uh, elevate off of it, or you can dwell on it. I guess. I mean, I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but
Yeah.
From a player standpoint, I think you can either be mad and show it in your level of play, or you can be mad and uh, not let it affect your game and just try to be the best you can play.
Oh, God, it's got to be really hard to be in that position knowing that your team's fucking shit. And like, and you have to go out there and play to this like high level. Like it's that motivation. It's got to be really hard for them to find that motivation. And when your ownership is not communicating with some of these core guys that have been there for a long time, and I just not that they have to consult with the players, because obviously, you know, that's the GM gets to decide. But when you have these guys under these long contracts who've been with your team and you're claiming are the core of your team, a little conversation could go a long way. Not saying that you have to accept everything they say and their opinions, but not including them in the conversation, I think really puts a bitter taste in the player's mouth. And then that's going to show up on the ice. I think the morale and all of that and the chemistry and everything that goes on behind closed doors is just as important.
Yeah. But I think it does come down to one of those things where you can just, you can dwell on it, or you can just accept the fate, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's sports, it's professional sports, and people are going to get traded. You're going to get blindsided. I mean, as we've talked to a couple guests, and people get blindsided with being traded. And I think it's one of those things where it's just the nature of the game, and I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough as a fan. It's tough as a player, and it's tough as, you know, being a part of the family too. I mean, you got to think these people have to uproot their lives to go to a new city, a new town, and make new friends, and
Yeah.
tough life.
Well, I'm dwelling and I'm
You're
moping right
dwelling.
now. Okay.
That's fine.
I'm
You're
gonna
allowed
mope
to.
for another day.
You're allowed to. You're allowed to. It's fun. I was looking at I've been refreshing like TSN to see like
Yeah.
the trades and the new signings, and some of them come over and I'm like, oh my gosh, this sucks.
Like who? Like who?
This is crazy. Well, I was really sad to see Craig Smith got traded, or I guess not traded, but picked up by Boston. So he left the Preds and is going to Boston. Austin Watson on the Preds also was moved over to the Ottawa Senators. And Austin Watson has, I don't know, he kind of pulls at my heartstrings a little bit. He's been through a lot. The Preds Foundation and organization have also helped him overcome some internal things that he's been going through, and he just brings a lot to the locker room. So to see that toothless smile go to a town that, again, their team just sucks, and you want something good for Austin as a person. Well, I do, at least, and so I think he'll do well there.
You also lost what? Turris and
Turris is gone. Nick Bonino's now gone.
yeah,
I mean, the Kings aren't doing anything. Let's just be real. I think Rob Blake is just waiting to see who's going to be left over and who he can piece together.
What about the Leafs? Any big action over there? I haven't seen...
No, they signed on Zach Bogosian, who just won the Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mm-hmm. They moved out Andreas Johnson. I mean, they're doing little moves here and there, nothing super crazy. We picked up Wayne Simmons, which is really cool. He's going to bring a lot to the team, but no real big moves. I mean, there's a lot of big names that are on the market right now, and I feel like the same teams are in talks of picking him up. I mean, Vegas is in talks of picking up Alex Pietrangelo. Taylor Hall is also being thrown out there too, and it's like, why can't Rob Blake just pick up one of these big guys and just ship out someone else who's not doing much? I don't know. It's a tough life.
Yeah, I think, like you said, a lot of hockey fans are feeling this way. There's also a lot of happy hockey fans.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to remember the second person that Detroit picked up, but Detroit took Bobby Ryan, who we've talked about several times here on the podcast. And they picked up somebody else who I think it was a goalie. But I was happy to see Detroit bring in some of that, because they have such a young team in Detroit.
Thomas Grease.
Yeah. Yes, that's who it was, and the goalie, and he's a solid goaltender. And I think bringing in some more of those veteran guys into that young building in Detroit, I think will really help them. And I was excited to see that. I'm curious why Crawford went to New Jersey of all places. Like the Devils, that team is such a cluster. I don't know. I can't understand that move, but we'll see. New Jersey brings in these guys. I don't know what they promise them there. They bring in all these names, and then they just can't play to save their life. I mean, granted, they had a lot going on last year when they lost their, the coach and the management and all that. I mean, that's unfortunate for any team regardless, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And Lundqvist went down to the Caps, which was pretty cool. I don't know. It's going to be super interesting. I'm still waiting to see what my boy Tyler Toffoli's going to do. I had a dream last night that I watched him walk into a parking garage, and all the Canucks guys are all walking over giving a high five, and I was like, he's staying. And I was like, wait a second, that was a dream. Is he staying? I don't know. Why do I have such weird dreams? I don't know. I don't know.
Does anybody have normal dreams?
I feel like a lot of people have normal dreams, but I have
Oh, I don't.
Weirdly vivid dreams. Like, I felt like I was in the parking garage with them. In a freaking parking garage, really? Like, where was I? I don't even...
Anyway, hey, we're dreaming about hockey. It's all that matters.
Yeah, so I'm waiting. I'm going to continue to refresh until I see his name pop up and see where he lands. And who knows, maybe the Kings will bring him back. I don't know.
I don't know. We've got to talk about, I think that's like about all. I mean, the draft went sort of as expected. I don't think there was anything really. I don't really follow the up and coming players like nearly. I don't really dive into that side of the game at this point. So I can't really offer any, true opinions about any of these draft picks other than what's already been reported by other people. So, I mean, that's all good and fine.
Yeah.
No, I didn't feel any particular way. Did you?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the draft?
I mean, I feel like it went pretty as expected. The Kings had the number 2 draft pick, which they picked up Quinn Byfield, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. Been paying a little bit of attention just knowing that the Kings had such a low draft pick, so that was cool. But it's interesting.
A high draft pick.
I mean, yeah, sorry. Yeah, high draft pick. Yeah. Well, sorry, I think of like low numbers. I'm still used to playing car. I don't know. Whatever.
It's okay.
So that was pretty cool. Although a lot of, Kings fans are saying that he's still a good year or two out from playing in the big league. And it's like, you got to figure a lot of these, onesie, twosie draft picks, they're in the starting lineup. I mean, they're not the starting lineup, but I mean, they're playing, on the first of the season. So curious to see what's going to be going on there.
Yeah, because this year I think it's going to be a little bit different with without camps and like the traditional way that they do, training camps and stuff. I think that's all still up in the air. So giving these draft picks an opportunity to get some ice time and to really see how they gel with the team, I think it's going to make for an interesting season.
Yeah, exactly. And the season is not supposed to start until January. So we got some ways to go. I don't know. That's how I feel about it. If you couldn't tell by the way that my voice just sounded, I just don't know what I'm supposed to do.
I know.
And that's great. That's great.
Well, January. Yeah. I mean, there's no point in talking about like, what are they going to do? Is there going to be a bubble? Yeah. What's going to happen? Right. I mean, we don't have any. No, we just.
Too early to tell.
No. What I do want to say to you, though, is congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
About your favorite player, Roman Josi, becoming a dad.
Thanks. Thanks. Yes. So, that was exciting news. I was very happy for him and his wife. I didn't expect it to be this early. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't think that they were gonna have a baby this early, but that's great. Good for them.
How long
have they? Be a great dad.
Yeah. How long have they been married?
They got married last year.
Okay.
Which I guess is normal, but she's a model. She's kind of travels in and out everywhere. But knowing that like they're still like, well, I guess they're my age, but I thought they would have at least waited like another year or two, but congratulations to them. I'm very happy for them. He's going to be a great dad. She's cool. I like her. They have 2 dogs. They rescue dogs too in foster. So I like them a lot.
Good. I'm glad you do.
You via text and you're like, I'm glad you approve of his life choices.
Exactly. I'm glad you approve of her. And I think I said something like, do we like her?
You're like, do we like her? And I was like, yeah, she's good.
That's good. Okay, fine. We like them. We're happy about this.
Yes.
That's good. Our podcast is proud to be on the Hockey Podcast Network, and the network is home to many other incredible podcasts, including this one.
Do you want a true champion's perspective? Well, come on over to the Bolts broadcast, where we talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, have some friendly banter, and of course, hockey name of the day.
If you pronounce it, you can get it.
Anthony Nunschwander.
You didn't pronounce it right. That's up. Anthony
Nunschwander.
It's N-E-U-E-N. It's Neuenschwander. Anthony Neuenschwander.
Dude, I always slept in German class, so I don't know how you expected me to put that together. Come on.
You only took it for 4 years.
I took it for 2.
You took it for 2 years? Oh no, J-Do
Yeah.
took it that long.
I took it for 2 years and was like asleep in all of German too.
Oh, you only took it in junior high. You didn't take it in high school at all.
No. Yeah, she sent us across the hallway, and it was like me and, I don't know, 5 other people, and all we did was just goof off because it was an empty room of just us while she was too busy yelling at you guys because you guys were a terrible class.
No, we weren't terrible class. A couple people were terrible people. I'm not going to mention names. Not going to call it anybody in this pod. It was
Chase
not
Crawshaw.
Me. It was 100% not me.
Oh boy, I know a couple of those names, but yeah, it's a good point, Chase. We won't mention those here. New episodes every Monday, only on the Hockey Podcast Network.
This week's guest is former pro hockey player Brad Leeb. He had a cup of coffee, a nice big cup of coffee in the NHL with the Canucks and Leafs. I've always wanted to say that. And he spent most of his pro career in the American Hockey League. He also played in Germany and the UK, which we have to talk about because we've had some guests on from there. And Brad is busy doing a lot of other things now, including he is launching a podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network. So welcome to our Hockey Podcast Network family. And your podcast is called Life After Hockey. So welcome to the House of Hockey.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here and appreciate you guys having me on.
So I guess before we talk about your life after hockey, why don't we talk about your hockey life to start? And tell us just how you got into playing hockey in the beginning and growing up where you did in Canada, and give us a little bit of backstory.
Yeah, I grew up in Red Deer, Alberta, and like most kids that play hockey in Canada, you wanted to play in the NHL, and I was no different. We had a lot of outdoor rinks where I grew up, so getting on the ice wasn't difficult to do to go find a place to play. And I was also fortunate to have an older brother that really enjoyed the game as well. So, I'm still close with my brother, and I feel that was definitely one of the big things that helped me develop growing up. And yeah, we both ended up going to play in the Western Hockey League.
Before you go into the days with the Canucks, tell us about playing with your brother. You guys played against each other, right? And then you've also played on the same team?
Yeah, well, growing up, street hockey, we were playing against each other every day.
I needed like the professional side of things. But yeah, you could tell us about playing on the street together and how lovely I'm sure he was to you.
Well, and that's why I give it so much credit. Like, I just had that built-in best friend at home that we would play all the time. It would be street hockey, it would be mini hockey in the basement or whatever. It was, great to have somebody to compete with and learn from. And yeah, so he's 2 years older than me. In minor hockey, we never got the chance to play on the same team. And so we didn't play against each other till we got to the Western League. And then later on in my career, we had the opportunity to finally play with each other. And that was kind of one of the biggest pulls to go over to Europe later in my career to finally get on his team. So yeah, we've been connected all the way.
Well, what was it like playing with him? Good, bad?
It was. I loved it. I loved it. He's like I said. He's a very smart player, and he's a centerman, and I'm a winger. So it naturally fit. He shoots left, I shoot right. So it was really a natural fit, and that was. We knew that we were going to probably play on the same line, on the same team. So that was part of, hey, this is going to be fun. Like, we've been playing with each other and against each other, kind of street hockey growing up. And now you get to do it like in a real league.
Were people like, oh no, the Leeb brothers, no, or like, what kind of like chirps and sort of experience was that? Being on the ice with opponents.
I don't know. I mean, we're both not too big, so we're not too overly intimidating. But we try to, be fast and skilled, and so.
Well, I know a lot of people were talking. I know you said you played for the Canucks, and obviously, Daniel and Hendrik Sedin were on there, and having that brotherly bond with someone, and kind of always knowing where they were on the ice. Would you say that that's kind of like how you and your brother were playing?
There's definitely a little bit of that. For sure. I mean, I wouldn't compare it to, identical Hall of Fame twins, but there's a sense of you're familiar with how they play and where they're going to be, and the more you play with each other, the more you get to know that. And my brother was very much a playmaker, and I was very much a shooter, so that just naturally fit.
Do you have a favorite goal that comes to mind that your brother gave you an assist to, or you gave an assist to him?
I don't know if I have a favorite. The one that would come to mind is just in our last game. We played our last game in the UK, and we were in a tournament format, so we knew it was the last game, and the game didn't mean anything. So both teams were kind of, it wasn't a really rough game, but we both wanted to, wouldn't it be great if we could both get a goal? Like, wouldn't it be great if we could both kind of finish our careers in this last game and get goals? And I remember Greg got a goal and I assisted on it early in the game. And then it wasn't until like later in the third that, he's trying to feed me, trying to get a goal for me. And finally, I think one just trickled into the net. So to finish off a career like that in a game like that, it was more than you could ask for.
Now tell us about your time in the UK. Who did you play for? Because we've had a couple of people on. Chloe, she plays in the women's league. Well, their version of the women's league, if you could even call it that, in Scotland. And then we had the UK Hockey Fan podcast on, and they've given us a pretty good rundown of the whole league there and the hockey life there. But from a player's perspective, what was that like?
We were over in Coventry, the Coventry Blaze, the EIHL, and yeah, it was it was a great experience because there's not a lot of fans at the rink, but the fans that are there are super passionate and super all about the game. So, there's a lot of familiar faces will show up every night. And after the games, you're interacting with a lot of the same people. So they have a very diehard group fan base, and each team has that. So there was a few NHLers in the league. So it just brought the whole caliber up. There's a lot of good players, and there's a lot of young Brits as well that are I don't want to be disrespectful, but there's just a huge discrepancy of, you're talking about an NHL player and like a young Brit player that may have trouble making a junior team in Canada. No disrespect, but that's just the discrepancy of skill. So, which made it for great hockey and interesting hockey, and a lot can happen and mistakes can happen. And so, yeah, it was an interesting time to be over there.
Well, speaking of the UK and just knowing that hockey isn't as popular there as it is in North America, what would you say, what do you think that the UK would need to do in order to be able to produce better hockey players and grow the sport over there?
Great question. I mean, I think, and my time in the UK was probably like 8 seasons ago. So even then it's been developing. Before I ended up going into the league, I think it was it has been improving. Like it was a pretty weak league that you wouldn't really hear much about. And then all of a sudden now it's become an option for players. And now as these leagues become more known and as there's just so many caliber of players around the world that are trying to find jobs, like it's naturally growing on its own.
Give us a good story, funny, tragic, whatever, a little bit of both, drama from your time playing over there. Besides the amazing story of your last game with you and your brother, but give us something fun, something we wouldn't necessarily expect.
So we had a guy on our team named Ben Olsen. Ben Olsen was a big, huge, and actually from the island. He's originally from Port McNeill, I believe. So Big Ben Olsen, they called him. Obviously reference to Big Ben in London. And he was our fighter, and he would go out and fight whoever he needed to. And even at that time, Paul Bissonnette was also over in Cardiff. So they had a couple, tilts together. And Coventry and Cardiff would always have kind of a rivalry whenever we got together. And both teams at the time, Cardiff was in kind of a smaller rink. I think they got a new rink by now, but it was, that animosity around the rink and the teams, and, you knew there's going to be some fights happening. So every time we'd go there would be some fights, but there was one time it was so perfect that it was like a scene literally out of Slapshot, that there was, after the game, police came to our door, knocking on the door, looking for Ben Olsen, because he came off the ice, and you have to kind of walk through the fans, and, they kind of have to fence it off as the guys come off the ice to get to the dressing room. So there was fans on our side of the fence, and one guy was going after Ben Olsen. So he wasn't in trouble by any means. He's almost defending himself, but I mean, you call it defending yourself. This fan came after him, and he pretty much one-punched the fan, and went into the room, which is the commotion with the cops. But it was just so perfectly. It was such a scene out of Slapshot. The cops coming to the door, knocking, looking for Big Ben Olsen. So
that's funny.
That was pretty funny.
Do we move on to your time playing in Germany?
Because that's so different from what I've heard. Like the fan experience there is very, like, their in-game experience is big time, and the fans there are pretty intense from what I've heard, right?
Yeah,
I think Germans in general are intense.
No, like
again, like just passionate fans.
Yeah,
and very much kind of like that, kind of the soccer mentality with the chanting and the drums and like that you see in a big soccer stadium, but like in an arena, and fans that would show up hours before the game to set up all their stuff and start their chants, and like it's you could be in the dressing room maybe an hour before, not even getting ready yet, and the fans are out there starting to cheer and starting to bang on their drums. They're warming up.
Jeez.
What was really cool about Germany, it's the league that has the most import players allowed on the team. So essentially the team ends up being, half German and half imports. And majority of the imports are usually North American, majority, handful of Americans, but majority Canadians. So there's a familiar feel over there with that hockey. And so from that standpoint, it's kind of an easier transition.
Now, what's life like living in Germany and playing, and what do you do for fun out there? I mean, do you hang out with the team? Your brother was there, so.
Well, I don't speak German. I was over there for 4-5 seasons and didn't learn any German. And
do you mean to tell us that you went to Germany and didn't learn German before you went?
no, I could probably order a coffee and a beer, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, tell me one player in hockey that ever like learned a language before moving to that country to play.
But I mean, even we were spoiled because we were even coached in English.
Wow.
So that's, I mean, I guess that's, kind of what I mean. Like, I didn't have to learn the language. Like, we were always spoken to in English. They, accommodated us. And so again, that's another reason that it was, an easier transition. And when you go over to Europe, a lot of leagues will, put you up in an apartment, give you a car, and a lot of these places might be close together. And when we were living in Nuremberg, there was a group of apartments that there's probably, half a dozen guys within that area. So very easy to go, visit someone, hang out. My brother and his kids were living like a 5-minute, not even walk away. So yeah, there's a feel of family. You get to really know your teammates because you don't know anybody else, and so you spend a lot of time with each other. So,
any fun stories from Germany, like Big Ben?
I'll tell you a Draisaitl story.
Okay.
And not Leon, Peter, his dad. So we went through a couple of coaching changes my last year in Nuremberg. And at the end of the year, we had Peter Draisaitl come in. And Peter's, he's a very kind of hard-nosed, kind of like old school German coach. And, there's a lot of frustration, on the team and, not really winning. And, my brother and I were, not having the best year at that time. And I have no ill will against Peter, but it's just, it's just funny to think about it now that, we would, when we're on the road, we had kind of like a double-decker bus. And so all the coaches would be downstairs and all the players would be upstairs. And it wouldn't be out of the norm to stop at a gas station for snacks. And, you could grab a couple beers if you wanted at a gas station because they sell them there, and bring it onto the bus. I didn't get any beers, but I bought a bottle of wine. And so got on the bus, head down the road, but I didn't have an opener. So I knew the bus driver had an opener. And so I went down the stairs to the front of the bus, took the cork out, recorked it. And then as I was walking back up to go to my seat, how do you interact with your coach at that time? Do you not say anything? Do you say, hi, what's up? Do you cheers? So I walking back and just kind of just gave him a nod. And the next day I was called into his office because, I think he interpreted that as I was kind of being cocky about it, like come down and, your bottle of wine and kind of like, what's up to the coach? And so, and again, we're in a situation like we're losing. It's a bad year. So he actually kicked me off the team. He said,
God.
Go home.
No,
you're done. And I was totally shocked. I thought he was going to, maybe get upset at the way I was playing or something like that. But he kicked me off the team and I was so surprised. I was frustrated at the time. I left. I ended up staying at home for a couple of days. The GM phoned me and said, "Kay, don't go anywhere. We'll sort this out." I basically got kicked off the team for drinking wine, I guess.
Wine and a head nod.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Oh God.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
That's something you never forget. Tell us, we're sort of like going all out of order here, but that doesn't matter. Tell us about playing in the NHL and what was that like and playing for the Canucks and tell us who you played with, throw out some familiar names for people as well to sort of set the time in which you were there, and then tell us about those experiences.
Yeah. So, I signed with the Canucks in 1999. And really, I feel that I played in the World Juniors in 99 in Winnipeg.
Yeah, we haven't even touched on that really big deal part of your hockey career, but go ahead.
Well, and I mention it because I did have a good tournament, which led to an opportunity. So my opportunity was, at the time, I could go to, and I wasn't drafted, so I got invited to the Canucks camp, and I got invited to the LA Kings camp, and it was kind of my choice. Well, where do you want to go? And the Kings had a rookie camp before their main camp, and they weren't guaranteeing that I would make it to the main camp. And the Canucks said, come to our main camp. Like, we want you to come. So just having that little bit more interest is what skewed my decision. Like, okay, I'm going to go to Vancouver. Went there, and that was the era of Mark Messier in Vancouver. Played well enough to sign a 3-year entry-level deal, and ended up in Syracuse of the AHL. Yeah, 3 years in Vancouver. Got called up for a couple cups of coffee, and I was just looking the other day. So I played 5 games in the NHL, and 3 were against the Ottawa Senators. So I didn't even realize that, but I guess Ottawa was the team. The question's always, how was it? How was it like to play in the NHL? How was your first game? And my answer was just like, it's exactly what you think it would be. Like, it was amazing. And it was like, you're just running on adrenaline, and everything is just so professional around you. The team's treated so well. Everyone's just at the top of the game. Like, you're not just with the top, NHL players. You're with the best coaches. You're with the best trainers. You're with the best of everybody, because that's the NHL level. So, just a great experience to be around that atmosphere, and how, people approach the game, how they treat the game. And yeah, like, you're just on adrenaline the whole time. And sometimes you'll hear, like, people will talk about it being almost easier to play at the NHL level. And the reason for that is because everybody is so good. It's the passes are always on the stick. Everybody's where they're supposed to be. So, the mistakes are fewer. They're at a lower level, at a minor league level, there'll be more mistakes, which makes the game just messy, and things will just happen. There'll be more mistakes, and more things will happen. So yeah, if you're flying down the ice, Marcus Naslin's going to hit your tape every time, and it just makes it easier because it's right there. So yeah, it was, a dream come true. And even more so, my mom, my late mother was able to watch, and my dad were able to watch the game on TV. So just cool. Like, you get to that level, you kind of, are able to share it with the ones you love. So I was grateful that my parents were able to watch.
I really like that perspective you just offered of how it's actually easier to play once you get through all of the emotions and the adrenaline and all of that. I haven't heard it described in that way, and that makes a lot of sense to me as a non-NHL hockey player. But that certainly seems like it's a lot more fun then, because you're able to really do what you practice and what you're trying to do. So tell us about your time with the Leafs as well, and any other good stories you've got with your time in either of the NHL teams, or any of the AHLs and leagues of that sort.
Yeah, so I played one regular season game with the Leafs. You play preseason games, but they only count like the regular season games. So on record, I played one game with the Leafs, and that was really cool for me because that was my dad's favorite team growing up. So, to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs and to play that one game was in Toronto against Ottawa. And yeah, we got smoked that game. We got beat, I think, 7-1. I was on a line with Kyle Wellwood and Nathan Parrott. And what was cool about Toronto is like that was the era before the salary cap. So that was the days when the Leafs were buying all these players. So you look around the room, and I'm probably going to forget some, but so many Hall of Famers. Like Ed Belfour was there, Joe Nieuwendyk, Matt Sundin, Alexander Mogilny, Eric Lindros, Brian Leach. Like you're talking like legit Hall of Famers, and that's
that's who you're competing against for a spot.
True.
Right? I mean, like
Totally.
obviously, not
Totally.
all of those positions, but those people, that's...
You look around the room, you might not be getting as many opportunities, but it's still cool to see all these awesome, players that you've watched growing up sitting around the room. And Pat Quinn was the coach.
Well, before we get into life after hockey, I think we should touch on fans. How much, you've played in games before and you have traveled and have seen a lot of different fans. How much of an impact do fans have on the game itself? Because I think fans think that they could be, I know for one, I think I'm a jinx sometimes. But at the same time, I do feel, just from sitting in arenas and listening to fans talking, they're like, well, do the players not hear us? Do they, not like when we do this or wooing or this or that? Like, how much do fans impact the players in the game?
I definitely believe that fans in the atmosphere do make a difference, and they can create that energy that can support their home team. That's a real thing. The individual fan that's yelling one thing at one player, that kind of gets drowned out. Like you don't really hear that stuff. But as a whole, like, when things are happening on the ice and everybody's getting excited and last minute of the game, like there is definitely some energy that comes through. So yeah, like, watching the games from this past playoffs, you do hear the sounds of the fans a little bit, but I would have liked to either be in the rink to experience that, and even just to hear what the players had to say about that, because they're going to be focused on the game enough that it's not going to be it's not going to change their game, but it definitely, like a hometown crowd could definitely boost you up.
Well, so you're saying us fans, we matter. We matter.
Totally.
We make a difference.
Totally, for sure.
I believe that.
Yeah, even if it's just one person on the sideline, hey, you're doing great, good job, go get them. Like, of course you're going to feel that and feel good. So think of 20,000 of those people doing that. Yeah, it definitely helps.
Yeah. Well, tell us about life after hockey. What have you been up to? And tell us all about the podcast, which has just come out when this is airing, and give us all the details on your life now.
It's been a little bit of a journey for me in my life after hockey, which is kind of the inspiration behind this. So my personal journey, I've been retired from professional hockey for about 8 seasons, and it's been challenging for me. And the transition has been challenging, and everybody's different. Everybody has their own journey. And, that's the part that I'm curious about. So, for me, I had, obviously there's the career changes, the job changes. I had some relocation changes. I had a young family. Just to like get real, like I went through a lot of personal growth and development of my own identity. Like, who am I? Like, what do I do? What do I like to do? and do I like the person that I am? And there was a lot that came up that was like, no, I don't. And so working to clean and clear that up. And part of my truth is I cheated on my wife, and, to actually confront that and then confront like everything around that. For me, that led to separation and divorce. And so like, and after hockey, my dad passed away. So not like, that's my story, and that's, everyone has a story. And my point is like, there's a lot of, everyone has change. So the Life After Hockey podcast is like, I want to interview former players about their journeys. Some people have, kind of had a seamless transition into life after hockey. Some guys have been, dealing with different things. I want to talk about it and create a platform for that. And there's also guys that are up to really cool things after hockey and supporting the different causes that they've had challenges with. So, I'll just share that, I'm going to be interviewing a few people that we talked about this before the interview, and I want to just share anyway, because, maybe it'll just kind of create it into fruition. I'm going to be connecting with Corey Hirsch. So Corey Hirsch, former goalie, NHL or Olympic silver medalist, and he's very much into the mental health and wellness. And he talks about his own mental illness and that experience. Like, curious about what guys are up to after hockey, but also create a platform for some of these players that are up to really cool things to support, perhaps the guy that's riding the bus, thinking about retirement, the guy that might be 2 or 3 years into retirement and confused and not knowing what's going on. And even for just, the person that's not playing hockey, that we all go through stuff. So my work that I do aside from this podcast is in the personal coaching, personal development space. So, that's where I've had to come to terms with my own stuff and clear my own stuff. My infidelity was directly connected to alcohol and a lot of pain that I've like suppressed and pushed down and ignored. And, you just go back and get curious and you got to do the work if you want to create that shift and get to that next level. So for me, it's like, for years, my goal and my vision and my commitment was to make the NHL. So that was success to me. So what does success look like for me now? Like that's the whole thing that's the whole question I was playing with. And, success for me now is definitely to be the best version of myself that I can be in all aspects. So, with business and with my family and with my spirituality and, and my legacy of what I want to create. So, to work with, and in my personal coaching, I work specifically with men to support guys. I feel guys need that support. We all do. And I want to support guys going through difficult things. I grew up in a very conservative household that, I didn't talk about my feelings, and even, to even go back a little bit, when I got traded was the summer of 2002. And during that summer, within a 3 or 4 week time, I was rehabbing a knee injury that I didn't know if I was going to actually fully heal from it. My girlfriend at the time became unexpectedly pregnant. My mom was in and out of the hospital and she passed away. And then I was traded on the day of her funeral from the Canucks to the Leafs. So as a 23-year-old guy, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what to do with all that. So like, even if you look at my stats, like I had the most penalty minutes the year after all that happened, because I just had so much anger and pain and, and then, go, drink it away after the game. And I just didn't know how to deal and process that.
Yeah. It's really hard when you don't have the tools. Like I can relate to, I mean, not all of those things, but when you're in that place of wanting to not live in that mental loop that you're in, if you're like, God, I just like hate who I am or what I'm doing and I want to change. And then you start looking back and you look at those decisions, you can see, oh, that's why I had all those penalty minutes. I had no outlet. I had no one telling me or helping me to explain that, like, you're hurt and you haven't processed it. And here's how you do that. And here's how you work through it. It's incredible work what you're doing, because so many people don't have that safe place to discover that. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just think a lot of people are really going to connect with what you're saying and what you're doing and how you're helping people, whether they're, former pro hockey players or anybody that you're coaching.
I absolutely agree. And the intention with the podcast, and even with this, even with me sharing, it's not about me and my story. It's just about creating conversation, because we're not talking about it. And, there's people out there that are going through stuff. We all go through stuff. So we need to start to have the conversation and make it okay to talk about it. And then perhaps you can learn from someone else that's gone through the same thing. So, it comes from a place of support, and, and obviously it's selfishly, I get to connect back with former players and talk about hockey a little bit. And on top of that, it's like, creating the platform for what they're up to and creating possibly a supportive conversation for anyone that might be dealing with the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's really needed, more so than ever. And if people are listening to this and not watching on YouTube, you've got a Change Hockey Culture sweatshirt hanging up behind you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with that, and what can we change in the culture, and how can we change it for the better?
I think we just need to continue to have the conversation to educate. So, like, even hearing about everything about Black Lives Matter, it's a conversation. Like, I'm half Cree First Nations, but I didn't grow up on a reserve. I don't claim to understand some of the hardships that some people have gone through. My mom is of Cree descent, First Nations, and my mom actually grew up on a reserve in Alberta, Musqueam in Alberta, and my mom actually was forced to go to residential school for the first couple of years of her life, and even just at the time of this recording, a few days ago was Orange Shirt Day in Canada, which was it's an awareness around residential schools and these kids. Orange Shirt Day is always at the end of September, because that's the time that the kids were actually taken from their homes and forced to go to residential schools. So all these, Indigenous kids forced to go to these schools run by the church and stripped of all their identity and cut their hair and all that kind of stuff. So, I think, the causes of, an Orange Shirt Day, or, the Change Hockey Culture, the Black Lives Matter, comes back to just, first of all, conversation and education. Because even going through and watching what the world's been going through the last few months, so what I was saying is I appear white. So I have definitely had white privilege in my life. And I didn't even know what that was. It's like, you're just, I've never had to confront it. It's never been part of my world. So just ignorant a little bit to it. And so even with the podcast, it's like, like, teach me, like, I want to learn. Like, I claim to, it's from a place of just educating people, and when you listen to someone that's actually gone through the experience, you can kind of reflect and like, wow, I really I didn't have to go through that. That's what privilege is. You don't have to wake up and worry about that. So you have privilege. So, I didn't even realize the privilege that I've had, in Canada and where I grew up, and even in the hockey world. So, I'm just, I want to learn, and I want to grow, and I want to support the cause, and I want to support the conversation.
Yeah, I think that helps when you have people on with their own stories of experience to share them. It hopefully allows the people listening to be able to better put themselves in another person's experience and perspective and in their shoes, and be able to go, oh wow, my life is so different than yours. And that gives me a better understanding of what you've gone through, if you've gone through something that's, challenging. So that's amazing what you're going to be doing. Very excited to hear the first episode.
It's out of my comfort zone to start a podcast, to host a podcast. And I think for all of us to lean into that fear a little bit, to expand our comfort zone, is where our growth happens. So, you lean in, you go for it, and it'll get easier, it'll get more familiar, and then you look to the next thing. Like, how else could I grow? How else could I improve? So, that's how I want to live my life, and this is kind of the next thing for me.
All right, Breezy, is it time for our final 3 questions?
I think it might be.
All right. We ask all our guests these questions, so you are no exception, Brad. Who is your favorite hockey hunk?
My favorite hockey hunk. Well, I've never been asked that question before. And with a little bit of bias on the screen, I want to support the Tyler Seguin opinion. He looks pretty good with his shirt off. I'll say that.
Oh, we agree with that. We just had we're 2 for 2 now, 2 in a row with that, Breezy. Yeah. Our last guest said Sagan. Who is your favorite hockey lady?
Wow. Well, I love you guys. I love what you guys are bringing, and I would like to give a shout out to Tara Sloan on Hockey Night in Canada Network and Hometown Hockey. I think she's really given a great dynamic with Ron McLean, and just her insights and her empathy that she brings to those conversations. And she's such an advocate for women in sport and women broadcasters, and she's been doing a great job. So definitely Tara Sloan.
Last week we didn't really have a story because, well, that was our first non-story in like the last 10 episodes. But do you have a Sidney Crosby story?
Ooh. A Sidney Crosby story. I don't. I haven't crossed paths with him in any shape or form. I mean, the only thing I know about Sidney Crosby is that his work ethic is top notch. Like, that's not pretend. That's not just, talk. Every player that I've heard talk about Sidney Crosby is that his work ethic is, he's the best in the world for a reason, because of how hard he works. And even he came into the league as kind of a 5'11" frame in a over 6 feet world. So, and he was able to find success. So, he's everything that I've heard about Sidney is is about hard work.
Well, thank you so much, Brad. I am so looking forward to listening to your first episode of your podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network. Tell everybody one more time the name and when the first episode will be out.
The name is the Life After Hockey Podcast, and the first episode will be out for the second season, the start of the second season of the Hockey Podcast Network, October 14.
Thanks for coming over to our House of Hockey podcast and hanging out with us. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. And in the meantime, you can follow us on social media. Just look for House of Hockey podcast. We'll be back next week.